Hello, I am Darkness Among Us, and today I want to talk to you guys about a peculiar phenomenon that is going on in Dead by Daylight, and has been for quite a while now. Now, you'll know, if you have stuck around for long enough, that Dead by Daylight has been going on for about 9 years now. So it's a pretty old game, and it is a pretty old versus game. Now, it's not a versus game in the sense that it is a fighting game. It is a versus game in the sense that you have players being pitted against each other. The fundamental concept of this is PvP, player versus player. This is not the only game to do this, so obviously. Anyone with any amount of age can see that PvP has been around since before video games. PvP has been around in sports, and even before that, PvP was around in tribes versus tribes. In our modern day, we have reduced this to mostly video games or petty warfare. But I'm not here to talk about the latter. I'm here to talk about PvP in particular regarding video games and the gradual demonization of winning in general, or wanting to win. Now, I know that nobody likes going against a super blink 12,000 hour nurse that slugs their entire team. I know nobody likes going against a 4-man Swift with a collective of 40,000 hours between them, and they know every in and out of the game, they know every nook and cranny, they know every potential spawn, they're all bringing windows of opportunity. I get that nobody likes going against either of these. But one thing you have to understand is that unless these people are particularly bad-mannered, nobody is doing this with malicious intent. These people are simply trying to win a video game, and it is completely natural to do so. Especially if the game is old. These games have... When these games get old enough, they begin to optimize themselves. Every player from day one is trying to optimize themselves in one way or another. Now, there are casual players who optimize themselves much more slowly, and then there are competitive players who want to win as much as possible, as fast as possible. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is simply human behavior to iron out all of the flaws in their strategy to keep winning a video game they enjoy. People have been calling these people sweats, and it has led to the said demonization of these strategies. It has led to, oh, these people are just sweats, oh, they take the game too seriously, oh, why are they in pub matches? And then there are people who say, this isn't a competitive game, why are you trying so hard, this is a party game. The problem with this perspective is that you don't get to decide this. Nobody gets to decide this. This is a thing that happens, especially when a competitive game gets old. And this is a very old game. And it is innately competitive because you are bringing a player versus player into the environment. People have brought up examples in the past. How can a fun party game be competitive? That's like saying Mario Party is competitive. Now, dismissing the obvious unequal comparisons there, false equivalency, Mario Party can be competitive. I don't know if you've noticed, but people get very upset over that game. People in general like winning games, and they don't like being cheated out of their wins, even if they're playing a game that has a ton of random chance. Any game can be competitive if people are willing to win it, and they're attempting to learn how to game the system. This is just how it is. This is how people are. You don't get to decide if something is supposed to be a casual atmosphere or a competitive atmosphere. It is either one or the other. You have to have a balance in these games, obviously. You can't have all competitive players, or the game doesn't bring in any new people, and you can't have all casual players, because then people begin to lose interest and they hop on the next bandwagon. You do need this mix of both. But a PvP game is innately competitive. People are competing against one another to achieve their objective. This is, by definition, a competitive game. Now, you can argue in the colloquial use of competitive, this is not esports competitive, And then there are people who will disagree with you even on that, and even I will. People make tournaments for this game, and whether or not you agree that those tournaments should exist, they do exist. And that's the end of it. You don't get to decide that because you disagree with these tournaments, that suddenly the game isn't competitive. That is an omission of evidence based on your own bias. These games have to have a hardcore player base. They need to have a group of people who are willing to continue spending money and grinding and playing. Continue spending. These games need to have a group of people who are willing to continue spending money and grinding and playing in order to keep it afloat. Because if a game's player base consisted of only casual players, it wouldn't be nearly as profitable as it is. There are some people who will say, well, casual players are the ones spending all the money. This may be minutely true. This may be on a certain scale true. But you have to imagine Dead by Daylight gets most of its exposure from people with thousands of hours. Look at all of the streamers who lure in all of these new players. Now, Dead by Daylight's growth has dropped off drastically over time. I am not going to bring up any specific numbers, but basically you'll notice that the monetization of things like charms and a battle pass over the past 5 to 6 years of the game's lifespan means that they are desperate to continue monetizing aspects of the game to keep it afloat. This, however, is not relevant to the conversation of sweating versus not sweating. Sweating in itself is a term that I fundamentally dislike. I get why people say it. I get what it's supposed to mean, and it's not always an insult. But it is conceived under the notion that somebody is trying too hard. And you don't get to dictate whether somebody is trying too hard at their hobby or not, because it is at the end of the day their hobby. Just because you're on the losing end or you're not having as much fun with these types of people does not make their hobby any less valid in how they choose to go about it. You're not you don't have to have fun going against them. Nobody's going to make you have fun going against them. You can even voice your displeasure in going against them. But the demonization of it is, in my opinion, harmful to the idea. You're judging other people and saying that their hobby is somehow less valid than yours because they're doing the same thing in a way that you personally disapprove of. This is also not to be equated with toxic behavior. Being very good at the game does not make you toxic. Teabagging a killer does not make you toxic. Nodding at a survivor does not make you toxic. What makes you toxic is going into other people's chats and harassing them, or sending hate messages that say things like sweating and I'm not having fun, why are you such a tryhard, and yada yada yada. Making it other people's problem because you lost in a video game against somebody that's playing in a way you don't approve of, that is toxic behavior. Winning is not toxic behavior. Being good at the game or better than you is not toxic behavior. Everybody gets heated. Control your emotions and try not to demonize somebody just for having fun their way. You don't get to decide whether it's fun for them or not. That's for them to decide and for them to draw the line.